Hey, welcome to Smart Elections special Halloween fun fact series on election protection. This quick video is about observing what happens after the voting ends. We hope you have fun.
We're going to be talking today about observing the processing and counting of votes. That is something that happens after voting ends on election night and in the days that follow, possibly for as long as a couple of weeks. And for those of you who work 9-to-5 jobs or have other obligations during the day, sometimes these processes go on in the evenings and weekends too. So please don't count yourself out of doing this kind of work. Anyone who cares about fair elections can do this work. So even if you're working on get out the vote now, or you're working the polls on election day, after voting ends, this is something that you can do. If you're working the polls not on election night because you'll be too tired, but in the following days. And you can do this work even if you don't have voting rights. So if you're not 18 yet, or you're not a citizen, or your voting rights have been taken away, this is still a way that you can have an impact on making our elections fair and transparent. So why is it important? Let's look at the first slide. Why is it important to do this work? We're going to talk about 4 reasons. The first reason is to catch mistakes. So election workers are human, and just like all the rest of us, they make mistakes. And the more eyes that are on the processes, the more likely it is that any mistakes that are happening will be caught. And sometimes, this is number 2, so sometimes we can get problems corrected in the moment for the current election. And then there are times when what we observe and report and follow up on can make the processes better for future elections. And now Rich Garella is going to talk about points 3 and 4 on this slide.
Yes, hi.
Rich is from Protect Our Vote Philly.
Yes, and I don't know if you can see me. I'm wearing my tin hat, so I have no outside undue influences.
Right.
The number 3 is protect workers from false allegations. So, a lot of people look at this as being observers, as being constantly critical, but also when things are going well, observers can see that procedures have been properly followed, and that means that we can challenge false claims that things went wrong. And it looks like that some of that will be happening probably in these midterms. But the point is that observers can speak up in public of election officials who are doing their jobs well in a difficult situation when things are going right, and defend against false claims when those claims are false. And then the 4th item is sort of an interesting one. It's defending observers' rights. So it's not even about the canvassing vote counting procedures themselves. What we as observers have to do is make sure our own rights to observe are respected, and make sure we can actually see what's going on. Otherwise, we can't catch mistakes, get problems corrected, or disprove false allegations. So as an observer, you need to find out what the rights of observers are in your jurisdiction. Make sure you can exercise those rights and see what's going on well enough to say whether everything was done right or wasn't. So the underlying point here is the election has to be fair, but it also has to be seen to be fair. And that's what observers are for. And I think we're going back to Emily.
Okay, and now we're ready for the next slide, Lulu.
Okay,
so
and I want to let people know that at the end of the evening, somebody who's actually observing the election right now in Florida, that's Jamie Friend, who's in Broward County, is going to come, and she's going to give us kind of a real-time description of what her evening was like. And one of the things that she said frequently is that she often, when she goes in, just immediately is told that she has to sit sort of in the corner, and she isn't allowed to see, what she needs to see in order to actually do her job of election observation. So you're going to get that report later on this evening.
So where this observation happens is not at the polling places, but in election offices or whatever site your local election officials are using to count the votes. So this is a photo of where the votes were being counted in Philadelphia in November of 2020. Sometimes it could be a warehouse or an arena, and often there are multiple stations in the same room with different parts of the process performed at each one. And if you see way over in the top right corner, it says duplication. And Rich has a story about observing the ballot duplication process.
Right. So we wanted to show that observing can have really excellent results. And this is something that happened to us in November 2020. We were over at the duplication area that you can see at the right. And while we were observing, we saw this is where workers are duplicating damaged ballots that can't go through the scanner so that they can put the duplicate through the scanner. And that's a very normal process done in a lot of places, and it's legal. The problem is that they weren't numbering them and labeling them as duplicates, which is required by state law. And the reason it's required is so that you can match them up later and prove that they were copied accurately if there's any kind of a question of that. So we put a lot of effort in and pressured our election officials to do it right. And they didn't like it one bit that we were pressuring them, but eventually they did correct it. And what that did was it cut off what could have been yet another accusation undermining our election. So we were able to call something out, have it fixed, and it's an example of how observation can actually help protect election results.
Great.
Back to you, Emily.
Okay, can we have the next slide? So we've talked a little bit about the who, what, when, where, and why of observing the post-election processes, the vote processing and counting. If you would like to learn how, I invite you to come to our next training. And I've put the link into the chat. It's scrutineers.org/next-training. We call our training How to Help Stop Election Sabotage. And the next session is coming up this Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We usually do them earlier in the day, but this one is at that time. And I want to also invite you to join the community at scrutineers.org. That's a final slide, Lulu. If you're interested in doing this kind of work in community rather than feeling like you're on your own out there, we have a thriving community. There are over 1,000 members in the Scrutineers community, and we invite you to become the next new member. Thanks, everyone.